Hello, Chuck Fowler. I'm doing my last project on Samuel Johnson, philosopher and theologist. This is for the American Christian Heritage. Samuel Johnson was born in 1696 to 1772. He was born in the colonial colony of Connecticut and grew up in the Puritan Protestant church. His grandfather taught him how to read and memorize scripture until he passed away when Samuel was 6 years old. He then learned about the Old Testament uh, and learned the original language of Hebrew so that he could better understand the Bible and the Christian faith. Um, this also opened up more curiosity and his fondness for books. He grew up in the um, primarily Calvinistic church, but his Anglican beliefs shaped his philosophical views. This was based on his time at Yale and then as a Yale graduate and tutor. He converted to the Anglican Episcopal. He was then ordained as by the Church of England. He did write the first American philosophy book. Um, he was also the first president of King's College, which later became um, Columbia University. Um, so, based on his theology, he did his philosophical views really shaped his theology, and this is based on some books that he gained access to while he was at Yale. So, according to the life of Samuel Johnson, his grandfather passed away at an early age, and Samuel bounced around from teacher to teacher until he received a teacher from England, Mr. James, who taught him well with Latin and Greek, who also deemed that the young Johnson ready for the college at age 14. There was no real primary school or elementary, middle, or high school during that time. Students were mostly tutored by those who were educated with degrees, and then they later went to a college. They weren't universities then. They went to a college for higher learning and graduated at young ages. Um, so Johnson went to the college at Saybrook. This became Yale College when it moved to New Haven. He graduated with a bachelor's in arts. Upon his graduation, he felt that he received the bare minimum uh, in his academic studies compared to his English counterparts across the ocean. Um, he felt that the real education started with the elders and the ancestors who came from England in the 16th and 17th century. However, those people were passing away, and the education that they received was really not handed down from generation to generation. Jeremiah Doomer, he uh, was like a liaison between America and England. He was able to get a collection of 800 plus books uh, with various authors, and uh, according to his Johnson's autobiography, in 1714, a well-chosen library of new books collected. He has then, all at once, the vast pleasure of reading the works of our best English poets, philosophers, and divines, Shakespeare and Milton, etc., Locke and Norris, Boyle and Newton, Patrick and Whitby, Barrow, Tillotson, South, Sharp, Scott, and Sherlock. Him and about 8 colleagues really got inspired by these books. They also went and continued their education, where Johnson received his Master's of Art or Master of Arts degree under Mr. Brown, and then he became a tutor for Yale. Samuel Johnson, during his studies at Yale, came upon a book by Lord Bacon, Instauratio Magna, Advancement of Learning. This was pretty key to how Johnson looked at learning and studying. This was a new approach, something that he himself did not learn through the old teaching or old learning standards. This also shaped him in creating the new learning that Johnson and Benjamin Franklin developed when new institutions of higher learning were established. This also resulted in 1722. Johnson and 8 others led an apostasy against the Calvinist Congregational Church and declared for the episcopacy. Only 4 continued with their conversion: Cutler, Brown, Piggott, and Johnson. They became Anglican Episcopal. According to Donald Girardi, Johnson and his constituents were not only the only Puritan Protestants who were dissatisfied with the way Congregational Church continued to follow the strict rigor of the church. So essentially, these guys were the old Puritan Protestants. They were the fundamentalists, whereas the new Anglican or Episcopal, they were more the modernist of their time. Samuel Johnson considered himself a minister pretty much when he graduated with his bachelor's at the age of 18. He actually didn't officially have a congregation or become a minister of a church until 1720. And this was in West Haven, Connecticut, so that he was pretty close to New Haven in order to access the libraries at Yale, and obviously he was there to also tutor. What this also kind of spurred was the Puritan Protestants, and these were mostly in the Massachusetts Bay Colony. They became fearful the dissenters returning and taking over the colonies with their theological beliefs. So multiple denominations were coming in, and they were obviously different than the Puritan Protestant and not as fundamental as the Puritan Protestants. And they created their own laws and whatnot to protect their theology and ideology. Following the conversion, Samuel Johnson went to England. He pretty much went on him and Piggott and Brown and Cutler went on kind of like a finding themselves type deal, where they traveled and went to the Church of England. They were working on getting their orders, their holy orders. This was so that they could then become ordained as Episcopal priest. Unfortunately, during this time, Brown ended up getting sick from smallpox, not once but twice, and the second time is what killed him. And that happened shortly after their arrival in England. Um, the remaining three did return back in 1723, and they began working in uh, working on which churches they would go to. And Johnson was commanded to Stratford, Connecticut, to begin his journey as an Episcopal uh, priest. Uh, this also led to him not only just being a priest of the church in Stratford, England, or Stratford, Connecticut. Um, this also helped him kind of work his new learning strategies and developing curriculum and working with Ben Franklin. And Ben Franklin ended up becoming the first president of the Pennsylvania College, which would later become the University of Pennsylvania. And then Johnson took over and became the first president of King's College, which is now Columbia University. And it was their new learning that created the curriculum for what took place. Now, while in between becoming ordained and becoming a teacher, Johnson met with and became very inspired by George Berkeley. He was a bishop, but he was also a philosopher. He did visit Connecticut. He stayed about 2 years in the United States, where Johnson was reading his material, studying him, which also helped align with his theological and philosophical practices. And it in turn became what Johnson published was Elementa Philosophica, which was the first philosophical or philosophy book that was published. And it was published by Ben Franklin. Ben Franklin at the time he was a philosopher, scientist, author, and a friend. He also had a printing press where that's how he was able to create the philosophy book, because he had the printing press, he had newspapers, so he had the funding and the supports to help gain that. Like I said, Johnson was the first president of King's College, even though it wasn't founded until 1754. The process for it all started in 1702. And it really hit some roadblocks, mostly because of a Presbyterian by the name of William Livingston, who really gave them a fight before being able to get the blessing and the rest of the board of trustees to override everything that Livingston was doing in order to make King's College happen. Actually, I have to go back. It was Ben Franklin was the first president of the College of Philadelphia, which later became the University of Pennsylvania. I hope that gives you a little bit more. I know it was fast and furious. I know Johnson, even though he was the first president of King's College, he did resign in 1763. And this was mostly due to a series of deaths within his family from the smallpox. He lost two wives, a son, a grandson, and it kind of really affected his faith. However, his son, William Samuel Johnson, was also very instrumental in keeping his father's philosophies going. Samuel Johnson did make a few extra additions to the Elementa Philosophica, with new teachings and updated philosophical views, of course, as he became older. I appreciate it. Thank you.